What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. I have not done one of these in a while because I, quite frankly, don't play a lot of new games right when they release. But I made an exception for one particular game this October. I played it a couple weeks after it came out, so the initial burst was kind of done, but it was still very much a well-known game. It was still a game that was still on people's minds as they discussed it and whether or not they liked it. So this one I got to experience in basically that first wave of figuring out what the Silent Hill 2 remake would be. So we're doing a review of Silent Hill 2. Now, before I get into my review of the game, I want to say a couple things about where I'm coming from. I was a fan. Well, I don't want to say a fan, but I liked the first three Silent Hill games. The first Silent Hill game, I didn't play it when it first came out. By the time I played it, it was probably like 6 years old or so. Silent Hill 2 was probably 4 years old, and then Silent Hill 3 was like 2 years old. So I wasn't like a day one fan, but I did play those games after they were kind of considered to be a little bit in the rear view mirror in terms of mainstream video games. And I liked them. I thought they were good. If I replayed a game like Silent Hill 1 now, I may not feel that way about it because it's such an old game that is kind of hard to embrace now, but I liked it at the time, and I liked Silent Hill 3 as well. I thought it was a really good game. So, it's obviously something that can work for me. If this concept didn't work for me, I wouldn't like those games. And I know a lot of people who don't like those games because the concept of what a Silent Hill game is just doesn't really resonate with them at all. It's a video game that isn't really meant to be fun, right? Like you're playing the game to experience what this character is going through rather than playing it because you want to chill out and have a good time playing something that's actually fun. Like, I don't think you could call any Silent Hill game fun, and I don't really think you could call this game that fun. And that's a hard sell for a lot of people. For a lot of people, you play video games because you think they're fun. But I'm willing to at least get on board and give pretty much any kind of game at least a chance. And I think these games accomplish exactly what they're trying to do. It doesn't mean I think they're the greatest games ever or I would give them like some perfect review. But I do think that Silent Hill 2, this remake, does what it intends to do, and there's something very respectable about that. What it does may not be for everybody, but it's certainly a very good remake of the game that it's remaking, Silent Hill 2, and it even finds little ways to surprise the player, maybe, which is hard to do when you're doing this straight remake. They didn't really add stuff, they didn't add big stuff, but they understand what the fans of this game are looking for. I don't think they wanted big stuff to get added. They wanted little twists on what was already there. So, Silent Hill 2, talking about this remake, I will say this. I played it on my computer. I played it on Steam. My PC is 4 years old. I built it 4 years ago, and it could barely handle the game. So, I would get like at most 45 frames. The cutscenes tended to lock at 30, and frequently when I was playing the game, it would drop to like 13 to 17 frames per second. Sometimes it would go to like single digits, especially during cutscenes. Sometimes we dropped to like 2 or 1, and that's when the game would crash. I had like probably 3 crashes in this game. So my experience was hampered a little bit by that because having to deal with that is annoying. Because one thing about this game is that it looks beautiful, right? This is a beautiful looking game. If I had a PC that could totally handle it, I'd be able to appreciate that more, but I couldn't even get 20 frames for some parts of this game. During particularly like graphic heavy moments or cutscenes, I'm not kidding. It would drop down to like 3 frames per second and it would be virtually unwatchable, much less playable. So there are some things I'm working through here, but my experience with the game was quite positive. I'm happy they found little ways to update the game without making it easier to play. and I think they did everything they set out to do. So I would say that the main thing with Silent Hill is an attempt to scare the player and alarm the player without doing it in the way that almost every other video game does. Resident Evil does a lot of jump scares. Resident Evil does a lot of, you come around the corner and boom, there's a threat right there where you weren't expecting it. This game is trying to do something more interesting, I would say. Like jump scares are not that interesting. I think most people would agree with that. Some like my understanding is that the Smile movies do a pretty good job of incorporating jump scares in a kind of fresher way. Excuse me. But what Silent Hill is trying to do is much more interesting. It's trying to build some really interesting lore, trying to build a really interesting story around that lore, some plot to pack into that story. And basically, the point of the game is to go through a really, really bad experience with an everyman character who doesn't really understand what's going on. So in this game, it's James. In the other Silent Hill games, it's other characters. But in this game, it is James. And I'm not going to spoil anything, although the original Silent Hill 2 is 24 years old, right? 23. You really should have been able to play it by now. But just talking about the very beginning of the game, James is just some guy who had a wife who has been dead for 3 years, and then he gets a letter from her saying that she's in Silent Hill. So he goes to Silent Hill to try to find her to figure out what's going on. And you're just kind of along for the ride with this everyman who is fully expecting to get to a town that is normal. And then he gets there, town's not normal. You've got a lot of things going on like fog, right? Silent Hill's famous for its fog. Silent Hill is famous for utilizing fog in outdoor settings. It's arguably more well known for it than even a game like Persona 4 is for fog. So there's that. The town seems mostly vacated. It seems almost evacuated. There's a lot of weird stuff. And you got to make your way through the town. You got to try to find why you got a letter from your wife that's been dead for 3 years. Why are you being called to this town? You meet a few characters on the way, and you do fight enemies, but it's very much a reduced part of the game in terms of importance compared to something like Resident Evil. And it's kind of, I think, very much intentionally frustrating, right? Like you have a dodge, but your character is not capable of dodging and reloading at the same time or within the same kind of motion. Your character is not capable of reloading and dodging at the same time. So fighting is really hard because you're running away from an enemy. In order to run away, you have to turn around and you have to keep dodging sometimes if they're attacking you, and you can't reload your gun. So now you can't really fight back. The dodge doesn't always work. It's a dodge that you would expect some middle-aged everyman to be able to do. It's not clinical. It's not surgical. It's just he's getting out of the way. He's not, I think, particularly good with the weapons that he gets to utilize throughout the game. He uses a few different ones, and you can tell he's just a guy trying to fight his way through a really, really screwed up situation. And while I don't think that the fighting element of the game is very fun, I think that it is also very effective in making the player uncomfortable. And I think that for a game like this, that's pretty clearly the point. There's a lot of points where you're frustrated because you feel like you should be able to get through these fights cleaner, but you just can't because of the way you move and the enemies move and the way the shooting works and the fact that it's hard to multitask, for lack of a better word, because um because James just isn't skilled in that area. I think that's one of the things you take away from Silent Hill. It really does feel like you're playing as some guy who is in completely over his head, and the majority of the game is just you kind of getting creeped out a little bit by the environment, by the situation, by the enemies that you run into, and getting confused and kind of weirded out by the encounters you're having with these random people throughout the town of Silent Hill. and you're just basically trying to get to the bottom of it. There's a lot of puzzle solving on top of the fighting, of course. And that's really what Silent Hill games are. There's some fighting that is, I think, intentionally difficult and kind of hard to do and a little bit unwieldy. And then there are puzzles, and the puzzles are pretty good. The puzzles are pretty good. A lot of like word puzzles, a lot of like rotating pieces around puzzles. There's a lot of like bookshelf puzzles. It's a little Resident Evil-ish. I think the puzzles are probably a little better thought out in this game, and occasionally even a little bit harder, even a little bit more difficult to figure out. Both those elements of the game, by the way, completely adjustable in difficulty. You can set the puzzle difficulty to really easy or really hard. You can set the combat difficulty to really easy or really hard. So that's cool. And I think that was a thing in the original Silent Hill too. But they do that. So that part of the game is fine. They've basically managed to incorporate the same kind of camera that you saw in the original Silent Hill 2 or a game like the Resident Evil 4, and it works for the game quite well, or even Dead Space. Obviously, the game feels very different than those games because they're not as, this one's not as combat focused, but it works well. And the game does look great. Like, I could even tell on my PC with all the settings turned down and dropping frames probably once every half hour. The game is beautiful. It's very impressive what they've done. It's obviously easier to render stuff when there's so much less of it, and there's a lot of like empty space in a game like Silent Hill 2 because there aren't that many enemies. There are very few NPCs, and most of your character interaction is going to come in a canned cutscene, and it's obviously a little bit easier to make stuff look good, and they really do make stuff look good. I like the little quality of life changes that they have made. There are occasional autosaves. There are better indicators to show you what is interactable on screen and what isn't. It's very easy to miss stuff in the original game. And in this game, excuse me. Sorry, lost my train of thought there. And in this game, it's a little bit easier to tell what you can actually utilize. And some of those puzzles, unnecessarily hard because you can't tell what you're supposed to interact with. This game does a better job. So, yeah, I think it accomplishes everything that it wanted to do. The story, if you're familiar with Silent Hill 2, proceeds in much the same way as the original. There are a couple of things that are going to be altered a little bit. And I think that no fan of the original game is going to be like super offended with anything they did. So, in that area, they succeed very well. So, this one's kind of hard. I'm not really going to say too much more about the game. I think I basically captured everything that can be said. The combat is simplistic, unwieldy, and you wouldn't call it fun, but you would call it appropriate for this game. And that's why I'm not really critical of it. But at the same time, while I'm not really critical of it, if I'm comparing this game to a game like Resident Evil 4, the remake, in particular, because that came out earlier this year, I mean, one game's a lot more fun. Guess what game I'd rather play? Like, that's just how it works. And the puzzles are pretty good. I like the puzzles well enough. But what you're really here for is the atmosphere of the game, and you're here to get maybe freaked out a little bit. Now, did I get freaked out during this game? No. I do not get freaked out by games very often anymore. I don't think that's an indictment on this game. Also, I play a lot of games socially now because I stream everything. I streamed this whole game over on my Twitch. I streamed it while talking to my friend on a Discord call. And I do that kind of intentionally because I don't really like to get freaked out. I don't really like to get scared, but just the Twitch stream alone makes the game playing experience feel more social. So I think it's a little bit easier to remember that you are playing a video game and there's nothing to really be scared of. There's nothing really to freak out about. It's just a game. So I don't know if I'm the best judge of it, but if the question is, did this game find a way into my psyche and disturb me and upset me and freak me out, whereas other games have failed? The answer is no. I mean, this game, It makes you feel uncomfortable, sure, but that's mostly because it feels unwieldy. So, if that sounds like something that's interesting to you, something that is just trying to be an experience for the player, and in some cases, not a positive one, right? Because, you probably already picked up on this, but Silent Hill is meant to be a pretty dour franchise, so it's trying to just give you an experience. It's almost like watching a movie with some interactive parts in some ways, because sometimes movies you watch are not fun. I think people are more accepting of that. They'll watch a movie that isn't really fun to watch, and they're on board for the ride with that. Are you willing to do that in a video game? That's the question. So, if you are, I think this game does pretty much everything you could ask it to do. It's a remake that stays true to the original in almost all capacities, and then finds a couple of ways to improve the experience, and then finds a couple ways to switch it up a little bit. So, it was a game that probably needed to be remade. It was a game that needed kind of like an official version that you can actually play, because the remaster was a mess. They screwed up everything. And I'm happy that people now have an easy access to to a good version of the game. So I don't really have too much of anything to criticize, right? And maybe it sounds like I'm criticizing when I talk about how, oh, the game isn't very fun. But in this context, it's really not. I knew what I was signing up for when I played a Silent Hill game. And it's not like they give you nothing to do, right? You do have to shoot stuff. You do have to fight stuff. It's just not like the Resident Evil experience. It's not like even the Half-Life experience or BioShock. It's different. And if you want to get a little bit weirded out, if you want to get a little freaked out, and if you want to go through what I would call to be, what I would say would be a pretty tough time going through this town, if you are on board with a good experience that is not always necessarily nice, yeah, go for it. But I don't know if you need to be spending $70 on it, which is what I spent on it, because that's what it costs. I think this game is mostly made for the fans. I think Silent Hill fans are going to be happy. I think fans of most modern games will be kind of confused as to why the game just doesn't play very smoothly. But again, if that's what they're going for, I'm down for it. All right, so scale 1 to 10, I'd go probably like something around the 8.8 area. It's very good. I don't think it's great. I don't know if a game like this is really capable of being great unless it actually creeps me out. Yeah, I would give a game credit if it actually creeped me out. When I played the original Silent Hill, way back when I was a teenager, I'm a completely different person back then, of course. When I got to the VHS tape with the nurse, that actually kind of freaked me out. Like, that was something that stuck with me and still sticks with me a little bit today. So that's a game that sticks with me in a way that the gameplay itself didn't allow it to, because the gameplay itself is just not that good, right? But a moment like that kind of sears itself into your brain. I don't think there was a moment like that in this game. So I can't call it great, but it does its job extremely well, and there's something to be said for that. So if you're a fan, I recommend it, but if you're a fan, you probably already played it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Thanks for watching. There will be another video game review in the next maybe few weeks, maybe month or two. The Metaphor review, but I have to finish that game first, so keep an eye out for that. See you guys later. More videos soon.